Every day at this time, at the 4 o'clock hour, bring on our 97.3 Eagles insider and NFL columnist, John McMullen from FanRagSports.com. John, how are you, sir?
Doing well, Pete. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, a little Bruno Mars music to bring in. I mean, John, there's so many storylines behind this Final Four of quarterbacks and these games. What sort of receiving core will the Packers be able to field? Can the Falcons' ground game control the ball and keep the defense fresh? New England's D slowing down Le'Veon Bell? Is Antonio Brown's phone fully charged? These are the questions we want to know.
Yeah, well, I think the one thing we can surmise is that Antonio Brown will delete Facebook Live at least for this week and try to move on from there. But you're right. I mean, the big story, you look at the Final Four, it's no coincidence that the quarterbacks in this game, you got on the NFC side, you got the presumptive MVP and Matt Ryan, and he's not even the best player at that position in the game because the other guy's Aaron Rodgers. And then you have on the AFC side perhaps the best quarterback of all time in Tom Brady against Ben Roethlisberger. So it tells you to have success and really more than success, it's about sustained success, because if you look at the Patriots, the Steelers, and the Packers specifically, those three organizations, three of the top four in postseason wins in NFL history, there's a reason for that, and it starts at obviously the game's most important position.
Conference championship weekend featuring four teams, by the way, that are a combined 29-1 since week 11 of the regular season. So we'll get into these games, but 29-1 since week 11. Yo.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone goes back to Aaron Rodgers when the Packers were, I believe, 4-6, and he talked about running the table, and he did in the regular season. And now, of course, they beat the Giants. They beat the number one seed, and now they got to beat the MVP and perhaps go to the Super Bowl. But, from New England's standpoint, we kind of expect it. I think, maybe that speaks to their greatness more than anything else. I got a kick out of Jason Garrett getting the Coach of the Year from the Pro Football Writers, which I vote in, and I certainly didn't vote for Jason Garrett. But I was talking on another show, and I mentioned nobody even brings up the name Bill Belichick because they expect it. And coaching and those types of awards are always about the turnarounds. And, the Cowboys going from 4-12 to 13-3. Well, the Patriots are always 13-3. They're 12-4 or 14-2, and it's expected that they'll be that way. So it's almost like when Michael Jordan was in the prime of his NBA career, and sometimes they didn't want to give him the MVP award. Or even LeBron James now, sometimes they don't want to give him the MVP award because they don't want to give it to him every year. And that's basically what you could do with the Coach of the Year award and Bill Belichick.
Well, John, I'm very happy to hear you did not vote for Jason Garrett and that you actually had the reality check to understand that there are other coaches who did a better job this year than having the fortune of being given the best offensive line in the NFL.
Yeah, that and don't get me wrong. I mean, they played very well, and they played very well with two rookies, and he deserves some credit for that. But if you look at it as a whole, I think the Cowboys would be playing this weekend if they had a decent game plan, if they had the proper game plan going in against Green Bay. You saw late how badly that Green Bay defense was leaking oil. If they went in with the mentality to run the football, I think they would be playing Atlanta. The game would be obviously in Dallas for the right to go to the Super Bowl. So I think in a lot of ways, Jason Garrett is the reason they're not playing any longer. So, yeah, I mean, there are Adam Gase in Miami for what he was able to do to turn around that team. Even if you want to look away from Belichick, there are a lot of other options. Jack Del Rio, obviously, in Oakland before the Derek Carr injury. All those were probably better choices, and all of them are behind Bill Belichick.
John, looking ahead to the game at hand, a couple of the news stories swirling around the game. What's up with all these guys getting sick? Apparently half the Steelers are sick. Aaron Rodgers is sick today, although it was funny when Aaron Rodgers was asked about being sick. Well, the one reporter tried to say, I don't want to treat this like the Jordan flu game, and Rodgers replies to him, then don't. But what is up with the timing of all these players getting sick?
Well, wash your hands. That's
or carry around sanitizer.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when you're in an environment like a locker room. And I got news for you, because I'm obviously at the Eagles facility every week during the NFL season, and you see people just drop like flies. And that is the reason. It's just simple. When you have that many people in a confined space, the germs are flying, so wash your hands. And unfortunately, it's hit the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's hit the Packers. Hopefully, it's hit early enough in the week where guys can be healthy on Sunday. But we'll see. It could certainly have an impact.
Speaking of impact, it looks like Quentin Rollins should be good to go. He was participating at practice the last couple of days. Meanwhile, for the Packers safety, Morgan Burnett, apparently he's walking around the locker room with an electric stim machine, according to Rob Demoski, on his thigh, saying he's feeling better every day, but nothing has been certain for Sunday. How much of an impact will not having Morgan Burnett be on the game on Sunday?
It's an impact, and I think he'll try to play. Everybody tries to play in the NFC Championship game, in a game of those stakes. You might even see Jordy Nelson in uniform trying to play, but they're certainly not going to be 100%, and that's the bigger concern is, are you going to roll him out there, and is he going to be able to be effective? That we're not going to know till we actually see it. I think the bigger issue for the Packers remains the cornerbacks. And you mentioned Rollins. Okay, he'll be out there, but so what? I mean, it's just not a good group. And they're facing, the most dominant offense in the NFL. And it starts with Julio Jones, but it goes far beyond that in Mohamed Sanu and Taylor Gabriel, and the ability to hit the backside of the backfield, the tight ends. Matt Ryan's one of those guys who distributes the football all over the place, and we've seen it time and time again. The Packers have been able to win despite their cornerbacks. It's going to be an issue this week because there are very few teams that can take advantage of something as far as having poor corners more than the Atlanta Falcons, and I think that's exactly what you're going to see.
John McMullen with us here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. John, you mentioned Julio Jones, but what do guys like Mohamed Sanu or Taylor Gabriel bring to the table that enable Matt Ryan to put up these record numbers?
Well, what they are is they're good enough to take advantage of single coverage, and it's very difficult to say if Sanu's having a big day or Gabriel's having a big day. I mean, everybody criticizes the Cleveland Browns for waiving a Gabriel. Well, it's a different environment. I mean, he will never see double coverage with Julio Jones on the field. It's not going to happen. So a lot of guys are going to be able to be far more successful in that type of environment than in a different one. But he's out there. And I said it last week when you see Ladarius Gunther traveling with Dez Bryant. That's a disaster, and it ended up being a disaster for the Packers. But the Cowboys couldn't get over the hump. If anything, Julio Jones is better than Dez Bryant, and probably significantly better as an all-around receiver. And if they're going to have Gunther travel with them again, good luck. And then at that point, you say to yourself, we're going to have to bracket him. We're going to have to double team him. And that's where Sanu and Gabriel tend to excel, seeing against single coverage. And it's one of those things, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And Dom Capers has proven over the past number of years he's not exactly the strength of the Green Bay Packers coaching staff. So I just don't like the matchup for the Packers. And you guys know me. I think Aaron Rodgers is the best player in this game. I don't think anybody has ever played the position at a higher level than he is right now. And I still think the Falcons are going to beat him because I think they're going to score 40 points.
Yeah, to the Dom Capers point, maybe get rid of that quarters technique, play a two-deep shell, try to limit the explosive plays. We're talking with John McMullen, the Eagles insider for 97.3 ESPN and NFL columnist for FanRag Sports.com. On the other side of the weapons that Aaron Rodgers has to throw to, you mentioned Jordy Nelson, the possibility that he won't be there, but Randall Cobb, Devontae Adams, how do you like how they match up against the Falcons cornerbacks like Jalen Collins and Alford?
Well, I like the matchup. I mean, Green Bay is able to play, but they're all banged up, and it goes beyond Jordy. Devontae Adams is dealing with an ankle injury. Geronimo Allison is dealing with a hamstring injury. So it remains to be seen how effective they're going to be. There's no question both of them are going to play, and we'll see how close to 100% they are. And I've said it, I said it earlier this week. Rodgers is so good. You know what? If he's got to go to Jeff Janis, that'll work. And if he's got to go to Trevor Davis, he'll make it work. But there could be a difference between those types of receivers and having Adams at 100%. Obviously, having Jordy Nelson, who's a legit number one receiver in this league, at 100%, and that could be the difference between winning the shootout and losing the shootout. And I think they're just too banged up at the wide receiver position to win the shootout.
Talking with John McMullen on 97.3 ESPN.com. Eagles Insider also covers the NFL for FanRag Sports. John, let's flip it over to the AFC for a moment. This is an interesting situation because the Steelers are coming into this game. They didn't even score a touchdown last week. Meanwhile, Tom Brady had his worst game of this season last week versus the Texans. Do you expect to see better play from both quarterbacks in this game on Sunday?
Yeah, I do. I mean, that's probably the worst you're going to see Tom Brady play. And we talked about, 2 interceptions and 413 attempts in the regular season, in 2 interceptions against the Texans. So that's as good as it's going to get against Tom Brady as far as defensively. And also give credit to Houston. That's the number one defense in the NFL. So that's a pretty good unit. But you're not going to have 2 games like that in a row, most likely. And that does not bode very well for Pittsburgh, obviously. Yet from Ben's standpoint, he has not played well in these playoffs. He did not play well in Kansas City. He didn't play well against Miami, really. And it's been Le'Veon Bell has been sort of the bell cow of that offense with 167, 170 rushing yards. And I think he will have another big game because he's playing at such a high level. But, boy, it's so difficult to deal with the Patriots in Foxborough, 16-3 since Brady and Belichick have gotten together in the postseason there. And they have so many weapons, and Rob Gronkowski's not even there. And you don't know what to do. And you add Michael Floyd to that mix. You add Dion Lewis out of the backfield is now healthy to that mix. So they can spread you out 5 wide, and they love to do that in the red zone, where they have Lewis or James White coming out of the backfield, get them on a linebacker, and Tom Brady, a lot like Matt Ryan on the other side, is a master of just spreading the football around. There's a different star every week for the Patriots, and I just think it's going to be too much for the Steelers to deal with.
You know, speaking of the Patriots, John, everyone talks about Le'Veon Bell. He's arguably, if not the best, one of the best running backs in the NFL. But the Patriots got three guys who work in tandem to give the Patriots a pretty good running game. In the dynamic of having Dion Lewis back, I think the Patriots running game coming into this game is being overlooked.
Maybe a little bit because they don't need it as much because they're so effective throwing the football. And I think when people look at Lewis and White, especially, obviously, you're more concerned as a defensive coordinator with their ability to catch the football. But like Garrett Blount, hey, you know, everyone coined the phrase blunt force trauma this season because he's such a great runner, especially in short yardage inside the red zone. So, yeah, I mean, it's just another part of it, but you tend not to worry about it because you have so much more to worry about if you're playing the Patriots. So you kind of gloss over it. But, yeah, if it wasn't effective, all the other stuff, you could at least do it more manageably because you could make them one-dimensional, but you really can't do that against New England.
Prediction time, John McMullen. We're on with John McMullen, our 97.3 Eagles insider and FanRagSports.com national NFL columnist. So who wins the NFC game, John?
Well, I think the Falcons, as I said, they're going to win a shootout. Yeah, I said if you like to bet, this is one of the easiest bets I think ever. This game's going over. I expect Atlanta to score maybe 40 points, 37-40. And I got them winning the football game probably 40-30 or 40-33, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, the over-under there is 61 in that early game, the NFC Championship game. And in the AFC title game, who takes that Lamar Hunt trophy?
I think it is the Patriots, as I mentioned. It's so difficult when the road runs through Foxborough. So then getting the number one seed is so meaningful for them. Mike Tomlin might be hearing Boston area sports radio in his headset. Who knows the crazy things that go on there. He's talked about that in the past. I think the Patriots win that game 27-20.
27-20, which is 47 points, just below the 50.5 over-under, if you guys are out there paying attention to what the lines are. Okay, that's the AFC and NFC game, but we'll let Josh ask you a couple NFL questions, too. Go ahead, Josh.
All right, John, so let's start with your favorite subject in the world, Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly, according to reports, met with Bill Belichick after he got pushed out for the Jacksonville job. Now, we know, John, that Chip and Bill Belichick have a history already. If I remember right, Bill called on Chip when he was at New Hampshire to help with the offense. That was about 11 years ago. So could you see a reunion for Chip Kelly and Bill Belichick here?
I could. That was the logical landing spot everyone talked about when Chip did get fired, because he and Bill are good friends. And then you have the other aspect that he can go there, rebuild his reputation, rebuild his career, have a ton of success. Obviously, it's not going to be the offensive coordinator. So with Josh McDaniels coming back, so it would have to be an offensive assistant job, and then sort of with the wink of when McDaniels does eventually move on, he'll become the coordinator. But there's two things with that. He's really, really got to temper the ego, because obviously Tom Brady's not running his offense. And he's got to be willing to learn and willing to implement other aspects to an offense. And obviously when you have a Tom Brady, the biggest attribute of having a Tom Brady is letting him handle things at the line of scrimmage. So this is the way for Chip Kelly, as I said, to rescue and repair his reputation in a lot of ways. In fact, proving he could be malleable and change, proving he can work. And if he does that, and he wants to do that, it's a great opportunity, because Belichick will give him the chance and obviously they're going to have success. So in 2 or 3 years, he could be a head coach again. But it's all up to Chip Kelly and how much he's willing to temper the ego.
Speaking of the team that said no thanks, Chip Kelly, the Jaguars are interviewing longtime Jaguar Keenan McCardle to be their wide receivers coach. I want to get your reaction to that, John, because it seems like the Jaguars, they brought back Coughlin. Now they may bring back McCardle to help with the wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the bigger issues there are at the top of the flow chart, and that's Coughlin, and that's Doug Marrone, and that's Nathaniel Hackett. But as we've seen here in Philadelphia, with Greg Lewis sort of being the sacrifice to the altar of ineffective wide receivers, the Jaguars had a lot of talent at the wide receiver position, and basically they underachieved. So you kind of wonder if it's the chicken or the egg with Blake Bortles performing so poorly. But certainly Allen Robinson, Allen Hurns, you expected a lot more production out of those guys. You didn't get it. And that's just part of the change in Jacksonville. I think it's a great opportunity for everybody involved because I think they did underachieve so drastically this past season. And it's a bad division as a whole, so I think it's a good opportunity for everybody who's getting in on the ground floor of what the Jaguars are doing.
And a bit of a disconcerting news, the Bills announced that Sammy Watkins is going to go under another surgery on his foot. By my count, Johnson, my memory, that's 3 now that he's had on his foot. This seems like this is going to become a major problem for him. Is he going to ever actually be healthy on the field for a season, John?
Well, it's anytime you talk about wide receivers or cornerbacks, those thoroughbreds, so to speak, anytime you're talking about leg or foot issues, yeah, it's a big deal. And those guys need to be healthy and at optimal levels to be what they should be. And obviously Sammy Watkins has a ton of talent. He would be a superstar in this league if he could stay on the field and stay healthy. But yeah, it's looking more and more likely that might never happen. Maybe. We always talk about that term, a successful surgery in sports, because there's never been in the history of recorded surgeries, there's never been an unsuccessful surgery. So nobody's willing to go on record and say, "Oh, I screwed that up." So maybe
that's the old Bill Cosby act. Oops, what did you say? Oops.
Yeah. Maybe it was screwed up, and maybe it just needs a repair, a proper repair, and that's the way you got to look at it, I guess, because it's a big concern.
And a little bit of slightly comical news. John, everybody's favorite punchline coach from 2 years ago, looks like he may getting back into the NFL. Former 49ers head coach Jim Tom Sula is interviewing this week for the New Orleans defensive line coaching job. Tom Sula, as we know, went 5-11 with the 49ers, which was better than Chip Kelly, at least.
Yeah.
Do you think Jim Tom Sula will be back on an NFL sideline coaching next year?
Yeah, I do. I mean, as big as a joke as you mentioned he was as a head coach, and it all goes back to that first press conference, which I often point. I thought it was a Saturday Night Live skit. That's how comical it was. But
it was priceless.
People forget he was a really good defensive line coach, and there's a lot of good position coaches, a lot of good coordinators who aren't good head coaches. But that doesn't mean they can't be good position coaches. He's already done that successfully in the past. He can certainly do it again. And as you mentioned, as a head coach, he looked like a disaster. But now you can kind of frame it, hey, maybe he wasn't that bad because Chip Kelly was a heck of a lot worse.
John McMullen with us here on the Sports Bash on a Football Friday on 97.3 ESPN. Yes, Jim Tomasula with the Niners. I don't know if he ever cried, though, like Mike Singletary did, John, but I'm enjoying the banter as you and Josh go back and forth. I think that skit, by the way, was something along the lines of, like, if you're having elective surgery, you're kind of awake, and the doctor's like, clamp, clamp, scalpel, scalpel, oops. Did you say oops? I believe that's it. I don't want to steal Bill Cosby's lines, but I believe that's it. Hey, Bud, the fun part is, so we talked to you today. We'll talk to you again on Monday after we've seen these great football games and find out who the Super Bowl matchup is going to be. Thanks so much. We appreciate it.